Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're watching this video lecture. In the earlier sessions of chapter 1 related to financial management subject, we discussed about scope of financial management and also objectives of financial management broadly, profit maximization and wealth maximization. In the current session, let us move on to understanding the role of finance executive in an organization. Of course, always we have to keep in mind we are talking about a big organization, naturally and usually a listed company, a huge corporate. Then only the broader perspective of financial management can be understood easily. And due to the dynamic nature of the modern business, naturally the financial management also has evolved into corporate finance, and it is different from the traditional corporate finance. Of course, whenever you take two different time points in the history and look at the evolution of any subject, definitely the latter time point will be much evolved than the before one. That is quite natural. But on the other hand, this particular subject of financial management is a very modern one, recent one, and very fast paced changing aspect of the overall management of the company. Just to give some perspective to this, for example, 20-25 years back, or maybe 30 years back, a finance person or an accounting person is considered to be only a number cruncher, only a person who will just record whatever has actually happened, and he will tell the management whatever the management just asks, basically only in the form of a management accountant. But of late, there has been a tremendous change in the role of the finance people in the organizations. Many organizations have understood what is the importance of the finance function for the success of the organization. We cannot look at the finance people as only number crunchers. We have to also look at them as part of the strategy team that can guide and make the organization successful. That has been the change in the perspective of companies, corporations across the globe during past few decades. Just to give one example, I'm not sure how many of you would be aware of this brand. Now it is part of the BMW group. Earlier it was a separate company or a brand called Mini Cooper. In India also you would see them in some of the movies, cute small car with the logo of Mini on that. Now which is part of a BMW group. But this was a separate brand earlier, and prior to introduction of Mini into the BMW, which is a German automobile manufacturer, one of the most famous and luxurious car brands in the world, other than Mercedes-Benz and Audi, which are more famous also. This was in very deep trouble. This company was in deep trouble. Of course, the strength of this company has always been engineering. New designs, powerful engines, excellent interior. All the things are related to technology and science only. All the focus was only on the inventions, innovations, and bringing better quality of product to the customers, which is correct. Nothing wrong in that. Every company definitely has to strive for that. But the problem with that company was, not now, it has revived now. But earlier, the problem with that company, like many other companies in the world, was they have undermined the finance function. They were not taking the finance function very seriously. They were just taking these finance people as some number crunchers. They give some reports. They will be always moaning about risk and all that. So the way generally the technical scientific people, to be very specific, engineers look at finance people, particularly in that company as a case study, was very of less stature. earlier. But over a period of time, not now, around 30 years, 40 years back, when the company was in deep trouble, one finance guy was made CEO of the company by the shareholders. Of course, the majority shareholders have decided that the ex-CFO of the company, who is naturally a finance guy, was made CEO, and then the company has turned around completely. Then afterwards, of course, its strength is still the technology innovation and other automobile things, but the kind of guidance and perspective the finance guy could give to this company and make it a successful company once again has become a case study throughout the world. That is one of the examples we can take. Later on, many companies also realized that the finance function cannot be just taken as number crunchers. It is a much more strategic function and which has very crucial contribution to the success of the company in addition to the core operations of production, marketing, anyway. Of course, finance function is always a support function. Nobody looks at it as a core function. The core function of any organization is operations. For a manufacturing company, operations means production. For a service sector, let us say for a bank, operations means actual lending and deposit taking activity. For a computers software company, let us say operations means developing of softwares. So for each type of organization, the operations will be different. For an academy, operations means teaching, classroom. For a hospital, operations means the actual treatment of the people, the patients. So every organization will have the core operations, which will be definitely handled by the people who are experts of that field. Of course, that is the strength of any organization, no doubt about it. But that is not enough, is what the world history says. And many companies which have given the finance function its due importance have taken the benefit of that. And in my personal experience also, particularly in MR Properties, which was one of the biggest real estate companies in the world, our team, the finance team, used to be given utmost importance by the CEO. And whatever the finance team says, that was considered to be of gold standard. So our statements, our contribution, our ideas were given due importance by the management. Naturally, that is one of the important things and good things that many companies nowadays do, which is also equally important. But again, as I said, in spite of all this, point has to be noted and understood. End of the day, finance function is only a support function, not the core function. But support also is equally important. Support cannot be undermined. Core functions will be always, for any bigger organization, operations and marketing. Core is always that. Operations is generally by the engineers. Marketing is generally by MBS, mostly. So these are the core functions of any organization, which will actually drive the organization's operations and finally the real activities of the organization successful. But in achieving that objective, finance function has a very crucial role to play. And that freedom, that kind of importance, ideally has to be given by the organizations, and most of the organizations give that. With this changed perspective of the finance function nowadays, in the new era of modern management, definitely the chief financial officers in different organizations are known with different names, but more or less their roles and functions are similar, not same. Names could be different. In one company they may be called a CFO, in another company, not a big company, smaller companies, they may be just called a finance manager. Some companies call them financial controllers, finance executive, whatever the name we give, that doesn't matter. In some companies they don't even use the word finance, they will just call it as chief accounts officer, who will handle everything, including finance and taxation, audit and everything. So it depends upon the organization size and its old culture. Names and nomenclatures could be different, but for our general understanding, let us use only one word rather than using 100 different words. We don't have to every time use all those words. So simply, who is the top finance executive in any organization is a CFO, that is the chief financial officer. What is the role of a CFO is what is our subject matter, and that is an important theory question also. What is the role of CFO in the current environment or current dynamic business environment nowadays? Like that, any type of question can be framed there, but ultimately the answer will be more or less the same. So what is the role of CFO nowadays? This was a quotation given by the president of IMA, that is Institute of Management Accountants USA. Of course, I'm a member of that institute as well. That institute's president, Jeff Thompson, once said this about the changing role of CFO or finance executive in the organizations. Now, the CFO's team is expected to add value. Add value is an important point. Not just about cost management. Cost management is important, but that is not just enough now. Cost management, which is part of management accounting, controls, yes, that is also important. And just acting as a conscience of the organization, being a generally conservative person. The finance people are generally conservative earlier also, now also. But these were all traditional ways of looking at the finance team. But nowadays, the CFO's team is expected to be adding value well beyond these traditional roles. And now what is expected of the CFO is collaboration by serving as an integration hub for the key business processes and as a catalyst for change, including business transformation, and as a consultant or as a trusted business advisor in helping the business to create sustainable growth. So the role of the finance executive has changed from an operational level, middle level manager, which was earlier in the form of a management accountant or a financial accountant, or only to some extent an advisor to the top bosses. But now the finance executive himself is part of the team of the bosses, because now he is working in collaboration with the management, and he is acting like a catalyst for the changes, including business transformations. Various changes that will happen in the businesses will have to be also led by the finance team. You will understand what kind of business transformations are possible in the subject of strategic management separately. That is the reason why strategic management is there as a subject, first of all, in chartered accountancy. Otherwise, what is strategic management to do with an accountant, if at all? We have to just think about accounting things and numbers things only. No, the role of CFO, the role of a finance person has emerged much beyond that. That is why we have these modern things, management things like strategic management as a subject in our CA intermediate, like EIS as one of the subjects, because the CFO or the finance person is expected to understand the technical aspects of the systems, how they work in an organization, because nowadays most of the organizations, almost all the organizations are working in technical environments, computerized environments. If you say that I only know how to calculate on calculator, I don't know how these systems work, I don't know what is a network, I don't know what is a database, I don't know what are the controls required for a particular system, then you will not be fit into such organizations. So we should know them. Finance people also should know them. Earlier only the technical people, the engineers used to know that. Now we are also supposed to know that, and that is our challenge. Definitely we have to take it and we have to rise up to that challenge. And strategic management is required as a subject, not only to get marks, but also to understand how the organizations actually work and what kind of business models that organizations will develop, what kind of strategies that they will adopt in different circumstances, how the business environment affects the organizations, different types of business transformations, how they happen, something like mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions is something that finance team, most of the cases, alone handles in many organizations. The actual integration may happen on the ground by local middle level managers, but at a top level, the entire aspect and concept of merger and acquisition is something that finance team handles almost single-handedly. I observed that, and I was lucky enough to be part of certain mergers and acquisitions earlier in some of the biggest banking corporations in the world. So that's a finance function now, unlike earlier. So the big challenges are there in the real life to the finance function, and we should understand every aspect of business. We cannot say, I only know accounting, I only know auditing, I only know some ratios, I know costing only. We cannot say that. I know tax only. We cannot say that. We are supposed to know everything. That is the point. And that is the reason why the chartered accountancy course is designed literally. I'm not exaggerating just because I'm teaching that. Since I'm a member of all the institutions almost related to the management accounting in the world, and Institute of Chartered Accountants of India also. So a couple of Indian institutes and UK based and American based institutes I am a member of. After studying and understanding the syllabus and contents and overall purview of all the courses, still I will tell this chartered accountancy is the only course which almost makes ready-made CFOs. That does not mean by becoming chartered accountant you will immediately become CFO, but you will have all the qualities and requirement of knowledge at least, not skills. Skills you cannot just get by reading some books. Skills have to be acquired over a period of time. But knowledge definitely of whatever a CFO requires is imparted by this course. That is the beauty of it, and that is why it covers everything that a finance executive is supposed to handle in the real life. Not only in the intermediate level, even in the final level also. Actually, there are no new subjects in the final level. If you observe, all the subjects which are there in the final level are already there in the intermediate level as well. Nothing new as a subject, not a single subject is new in the final. All the subjects are already there in the intermediate level itself. Of course, the depth of the subjects will be little more at the final level, that's all. But once we understand them well in the intermediate level, at the final level, we will be able to handle them relatively easily. So anybody who is in the finance function is supposed to know accounting, supposed to know how to prepare financial statements, how to analyze financial statements, how to take decisions like financing, investment and dividend decisions, and how to do the audit, whether it is external audit or internal audit. Both of them are important. Same way, what are the various legal things that are there in the country in the Indian context? What are the various acts statutorily applicable to the companies, major laws which are applicable to the companies in India, that we should know. Same way, the tax laws that are applicable, both direct tax laws and indirect tax laws, we should know. What are the strategic management level things that happen in the companies at a higher level, very high level? But those things we should know, not that we will be part of it immediately after becoming a CA, but we should know them. Now, nobody is going to teach them later. We should already be pre-equipped with all this knowledge before entering into the corporate sector, before entering into the international competition of financial executives. And the good news about chartered accountancy is definitely this is the best course for making an international financial executive almost ready-made, because it covers the comprehensive things that everybody should understand, including management accounting, including financial management, including taxation, audit, law, accounting, systems, even the computer systems, that is enterprise information systems, and strategic management, everything. And at a broader level, understanding the economics also, that is economics for finance. So what is not there in this course, which is required for a CFO? There is nothing. Almost everything is there. But yes, skills is a different story that will be learned and improved and developed over a period of time as the time progresses for you in future. Knowledge level wise, definitely this course itself is a simple indicator of what a CFO or what a finance executive is supposed to be knowing. But what he will do, will he do everything all the times? Not necessarily. There may be specialized roles, there may be comprehensive roles, but for a top person like CFO, he should know everything. He cannot say, I am a CFO, I know only financial management, I don't know taxation. He cannot say that. So the point of the role of a top person is not just restricted to only one thing. It is a very broader perspective. It covers almost all the areas that we actually study. Nothing great there. And if you look at these points also, what are the responsibilities of the financial executive or a CFO, generally speaking? These are the same things what we have as chapters in this subject. Financial analysis and planning. Of course, whether the organization has sufficient funds or not, how much of size of the firm should be designed, and what is the rate of growth that should be targeted. That is a planning part and financial analysis part. That will have to be done by the CFO. Investment decisions, well, that is one of our chapters only. We already discussed about it. Nothing but efficient allocation of funds to specific assets. Financing decisions, that also we already know. That is part of the role of the CFO. Like capital structure decisions, raising the funds in favorable terms, of course, at the best possible, lowest possible cost of capital. That has to be done. Management of financial resources like working capital management. Risk management, of course, that is part of it. So what is not there here in this subject, whatever our chapters and learning outcomes of financial management is, that itself more or less is the responsibilities of CFO nowadays, in addition to the traditional responsibilities. What are the other subjects talking about? Those are mostly traditional. Accounting was always there. That is not something new. Costing almost was there since at least 2 centuries. Management accounting, it evolved a lot, but earlier also it was there. But of course, nowadays, modern costing techniques like activity-based costing have made it much more scientific and practical. But yes, that has always been there. Auditing has always been there. Legal things have always been there. All our laws are more than century-old laws, most of them. Taxes were already there. Some changes will happen, but taxes were there. Changes in names may happen. Earlier there used to be service tax, now we call it GST. That's okay, but these were there. These are all traditional roles of a finance person in an organization. But now the modern roles are, particularly if you at all you have to understand from a simple understandability point of view, your paper 7 and 8 are the modern things that are added now. Of course, financial management, I'm not saying that it was not there earlier, but these are the areas which are more modern and where the job opportunities and the kind of career openings are more here. And we are supposed to know this more than the other things in the current market scenario. That does not mean other things like accounting and all we are not supposed to know. That we are anyway supposed to know. That is not something that specialization, some great thing we are doing. Accountant is supposed to know accounting. Accountant is supposed to know auditing, taxation, etc. That is a basic thing that is expected. If that also we don't know, then we are not even called accountant. But the point here is we are not just going to become accountants. We are going to become financial officers. In order to become a financial officer or a financial executive, not just an accountant, we need to have all these areas of knowledge very well packed in ourselves. And of course, the implementation aspects in reality will come depending upon the role that we take in an organization later. But before that itself, we should be knowledgeable in all these things. So what are the broader two types of roles that a financial executive or a financial officer, chief financial officer will take? At a broader level, if you see, one role is that of a treasurer, one role is that of a controller. So what is a treasurer job and what is a controller job? Usually in the organizations, again let me tell from the practical experience of MR Properties, there was a CFO. I'm just telling really what was there as our organization structure in MR Properties when I used to work like a cost controller, which was, this was my role there, by the way. Now, CFO is the top, definitely. I was not a CFO and all. If I waited for 3, 4 or 5, 10 more years, I would have become. That's a different story. Never wanted to become one, but still, you should become if at all you have that goal. So CFO is the top of the finance team, definitely. And there used to be a financial controller. Financial controller is one of the things, and there is a treasurer. I don't tell the names, but I still remember the faces when I write about that. So there is a treasurer guy and there is a financial controller guy, and the CFO was a chartered accountant. Financial controller was Indian, both are Indians, and chartered accountants. This CFO was not just a chartered accountant, he was a CA and a CFA, American CFA, that is a chartered financial analyst also. Very knowledgeable person and a respected person in the entire organization. Of course, for our team, he is our big boss. Our immediate boss is this guy, financial controller, who is also chartered accountant, young guy and very close to me, because more or less our roles are closer, not like a huge difference is there between us. But yes, he is the boss, no doubt in that. So part of like a team type of little friendliness will be there with this guy, that is financial controller, who is also a chartered accountant. Treasurer is somebody who with whom I never used to have much of contacts, because he has a separate chamber. Nobody enters that, including CFO. Treasurer is a guy who has tremendous responsibility and tremendous pressure also, actually, on a day-to-day basis, second by second, minute by minute, because most of the cases he will do this cash management in the form of not only cash management, investment management mostly they do. So what happens is they will be busy in the stock market operations, buying and selling bonds and shares as required. So this person, I remember his face, but I forgot his name. But he was not a chartered accountant, but he was only a CFA. Usually CFAs will become treasurers. Of course, this position was not there in that company, but there may be a person as a credit manager in other companies. Cash manager is general. In MR Properties, there was only one guy. There is no team also. Treasurer means only one person. He's a whole and sole person handling single-handedly. There would be like around 6 to 7 computer screens in front of him. If somebody just like that goes into the chamber and looks at his table, suddenly you may feel that he is going to do some rocket launching or space station operation he is doing, but that much of activity he will do. But as I said, including CFO, his boss also cannot enter his room just like that. So very busy person, treasurer is. So that is a different role. Why I'm talking practically, but this is a different story. What is there given in this diagram is for any organization much bigger than MR, because for a particular type of company, all roles are not required. Credit manager is required for a company where there are receivables. There it is required. For MR, there was no receivables. It is not a manufacturing company. There are no customers who are going to buy the goods on credit. So there was no requirement. But for other companies, definitely credit manager would be required, cash manager would be required. And there would be somebody who is a fundraising manager. Usually there is no such position because fundraising is not something that happens on a daily basis. Treasurer himself handles this. If at all any requirement for short-term financing is required, he will handle this usually with the banks. So this entire banks and financial institutions and the stock markets particularly, these all the things are handled by treasurer generally. If he has a team, he might have a cash manager under him, credit manager under him, capital budgeting manager usually separately will not be there. That will be part of normally the controller only, financial controller only. Portfolio manager is a big thing. That's what this guy actually does. As I said, portfolio management means the various assets that a company has in the form of bonds, in the form of other assets like sometimes commodities, sometimes stocks. Stocks means shares. So these type of things, and deposits, bank deposits, banking operations, everything is handled by treasurer. Very high level, handling billions of dollars on a monthly basis, billions in that company. Like that, if you imagine a bigger company, much bigger company in the world, something like the treasurer for let us say Apple, America, USA, he would be handling billions on a daily basis. So like that, that is a very crucial role, and with a team of people who support him, he will handle these type of functions: cash management, credit management, capital budgeting, fundraising, and portfolio management. These are the roles of treasurer, of course, who will report to CFO. But when I said these qualifications, don't take them as granted that once I become CFA, I will become treasurer. Once I become CA, I will become financial controller. You will, eventually you will, after a lot of experience and performance, most importantly. Qualifications will not give you jobs. They may give you jobs, but they will not give you positions. Qualifications will give you jobs at the maximum. They will not give you positions. Positions have to be acquired. Positions have to be reached with our performance only, not with the qualifications alone. But I'm just telling the fact. Indian Chartered Accountant were in the key positions in one of the biggest real estate companies in the world. Like this, many companies in the world have Indian Chartered Accountants at the top positions. Many banks, Standard Chartered Bank, like type of banks, have top CFO positions filled by Indians, Indian Chartered Accountants to be particular. So that is the beauty of the course, which brings the best of financial functions knowledge to the candidates who definitely learn it in the proper way, and of course who excel in the real life application of those things once they actually perform those functions in real life. But here, these are the two broader areas of the finance function, we can say, in a general organization structure: treasurer, controller. Okay, in this controller part, if you come to this, yes, our financial controller was there, and within him cost accounting manager used to work. So this was me. I was working as a cost accounting manager. The name was different. I was called a cost controller. So that is one of the functions of the financial controller, where both will work together. Mostly the financial controller will not interfere with costing department. Though I report to him, there is nothing that there is interference there. But he will be definitely most interested here. That is financial accounting. The separate person is there. Again, an Indian Chartered Accountant. I was also a Chartered Accountant and a cost accountant. So fortunately, our entire finance team was Indian in that company. Of course, the leaders of the teams, some of the people who were as members of the teams, some of them were locals and some of them were from other countries like Philippines, etc. But all this management team middle and higher level management team of the finance function in that company was all Indians. So here, financial accounting manager is a very crucial role because he will have almost day-to-day accounting job. Imagine such a big organization, how many transactions happen on a daily basis, how many transactions have to be entered by his team. He will not enter journal entries and all, but his team has to enter all of them into the system. He has to look at them, and reconciliations have to be done on a regular basis. All the other aspects like receivables, payables, and in conjunction with treasurer, all these things have to be handled from an accounting point of view by this financial accounting manager. Controller definitely will have more influence on that guy, but of course cost accounting manager has a different role altogether. He will be having, of course, in a organizational point of view, immediate boss is controller, but most often than not, I used to report to the CFO, because CFO used to ask the things and I used to give to the CFO directly. Though reality wise, just for the sake of chart wise, financial controller was my boss. But the reality again on the other side will be what? This financial controller is not much interested in this costing. He'll be more interested in the other things like audit. In Dubai, there was no tax, so there was no tax manager. But audit is a very important role, internal and external audit. The financial controller will take care of it. Very important thing, the systems, data processing manager. For this only you have EAS now. You should understand this. You'll sit in the financial controller position and you don't know anything about data processing. Then what you will do there? Definitely, nowadays in many organizations, this is a very practical thing. In many organizations, the finance people are the ones who are having a control, or who are having as part of their departments, as part of their team, this information systems also. So the risks and other things, controls related to the information systems, you cannot say it is left to some software engineers and left to some only IT engineers or computer science engineers. No, they will be there in the team definitely, but ultimately on top of them, who is the one who is responsible for that entire department is the one who is financial controller. So our financial controller used to be very busy, as I remember, with majorly these things. Receivables was not much, payables was a very big thing. Of course, in conjunction with treasurer, financial accounting was a crucial role, day to day. Tax was not there. Audit is a crucial role, internal audit, and occasionally quarterly external audit, and the data processing also. The financial controller used to be very busy. Luckily, I had almost autonomy as working with CFO directly as a cost accounting manager, where my major relationship was with payables. So other things I am not much with connected. Financial accounting and all those are all already systematized, so nothing there to have a regular contact. But with payables and payroll, these are the two things where there used to be a direct contact. And how the cost accounting system works and all is a different story, which we already learned, related to many industries in the subject of costing, particularly to a real estate company or a construction company, in the form of contract costing. To some extent, the kind of principles that are required to be applied, most important things are in real life are budgeting. We have to prepare cash budgets. We have to prepare the budgets for each and every project wise. So project wise budgets, weekly budgets, monthly budgets, all of them to be consolidated and checked. And then performance management, we call it standard costing if at all we want. But similar to that, what was the budget, what is actual, and what is the difference, and why the difference has been really there. These all things had to be actually investigated by us in the costing, and then they had to be reported on a periodic basis to the top management like CFO, and sometimes even directly the executive director of finance. On top of CFO, there is another director who is part of the board of directors, so we used to call her executive director of finance. She was a Malaysian then, so she used to sometimes suddenly call for some information, and we had to give all those things. So the big organization has huge roles to be played, but once again I'm telling you, except for the operational roles like payables, receivables and all, most of the other roles, whether it is treasurer, whether it is capital budgeting, whether it is portfolio management, whether it is internal auditor, whether it is EIS or data processing manager or a cost accounting manager, financial accounting manager, tax manager, who are all these people? Incidentally, in MR there was no tax manager because there was no tax in Dubai then, but in other countries there will be tax now. Who will be all these people? Good news is everybody can be a chartered accountant, or we can otherwise say in this way, a chartered accountant can become any of these things. Any. That is the nature and opportunities of this course, and that will definitely have us placed in any one of these roles, of course, according to our choice. Sometimes we may not be the choosing ones. They will choose and they will place us according to their requirement, whatever it may be. But definitely at each point, wherever we look at this organizational chart, this finance function as a whole is something which can be served by the chartered accountants at any particular point. Any one particular role here is not something that a chartered accountant cannot manage, and they will manage, and they have been managing in any organization in the world. They are the ones who are managing also. Of course, one exception, the data processing manager. Not necessarily all organizations will have the finance people as bosses, but in our organization, when I worked with MR Properties, our financial controller was the boss of that. Not necessarily always. And same way, internal audit also usually will be an independent department. Generally, they don't report to the financial controller. Why? Because that independence is required. So they will be also not working under the controller. They will work independently of everybody here in this team. So keeping those exceptions apart, every particular point, every particular job definitely can be occupied by the chartered accountant, and sometimes working with somebody else or sometimes working independently. Something like internal auditor is an independent role. So that is the current day's finance function in a nutshell. So what is this role of finance executives in today's world vis-a-vis in the past? Now, as I already told, it is not just about accounting. Accounting is important, but not just about accounting, not just about financial reporting, and not just about risk management and just being conservative all the time. No, now it is also being about a strategic business partner of the CEO. So CEO and CFO are almost like contemporaries now. Of course, CEO is the chief. He is the boss of CFO also, but still they are almost equal. So CEO is the leader among equals, we can say. So one of those equals is CFO, but still they work together. It's not about ego issues. Who is bigger? CEO is bigger, CFO is bigger. Financial controller, actually, when I worked with the person I was talking about, he was hardly like 3-4 years elder to me, and very friendly. We were just working like friends, nothing like oh boss and all. So that teamwork is what the finance function is that requires the teamwork. Finance function, for that matter, any function in the organization requires teamwork. Finance function, of course, requires also that kind of teamwork, and with the finance function and the CEO also, that much of connectivity and coordination should be there. So he is not just a subordinate to the CEO, he is actually a strategic business partner of the CEO. Nowadays we can say that. So what kind of things earlier a CFO used to do, what kind of things now CFO is doing? Most of them are there already, not that they are not being done by CFOs nowadays. Actually, what is extra that we can see? What was there earlier, that if you see, budgeting was happening, forecasting was being done by CFOs earlier, accounting, yes, treasury, including cash management, yes, preparing the internal financial reports for management. This is what popularly, you have to remember these things, because in future when you get these jobs, you will be called as with these names only. This is popularly called MIS manager, that is management information systems. Reports, management asks for some report, you have to prepare that and give. That's all. So that's a very crucial role in many organizations. There is a person generally dedicated for that, usually a management accountant, you can call it. Again, a chartered accountant or a cost accountant or a CMA, somebody like that can become that. A CMA can become like that. So internal financial reports, quarterly and annual filings for investors, that is a legal requirement. Tax filings, legal requirements. Tracking the accounts payable and accounts receivable, very operational, the most donkey job of all. Yes, this will be also important, very important, but the most donkey job of all is that used to be done by the CFOs earlier, at least overseen by them, if not actually at an operational level being done by them. There will be people as a part of the team who will do that, and that entire team will be managed by CFO at the top level. And other things like travel and management expenses of the management, this is like an accountant job. specifically speaking, a typical accountant, name wise CFO, but a typical accountant, what he does is all these things which are there in the earlier left hand side box. Now, what the CFO does, he does everything actually now also. Don't think that the left side is gone and that is replaced by right side. That is wrong. That is wrong. No, he still does the left side thing. Now he got some more things that have been added. Budgeting is still there, forecasting is still there, nothing's changed. Accounting, treasury, everything also is still there, by the way. CFO has not taken himself out of these responsibilities. Definitely, he will be the chief of the finance function, means somebody who is working with him, below him as one of these players, will do all the things which are there on the left hand side. But in addition to that, at a top level, strategic level, as I said just now earlier, mergers and acquisitions he will manage. Very strategic thing, mergers and acquisitions. Profitability analysis he will do, customer-wise profitability, product-wise profitability. If you remember the activity-based costing in the costing subject in group 1, there customer-wise profitability or product profitability analysis, PPA, was there. That is new. That is what the new CFO is supposed to do, or the finance person. Don't think that single-handedly he is handling everything. He has some 10 hands and he is some person gifted with miracles and all. No, he himself is not doing everything. He is the chief of all these things. For each of these things, there could be a person or a team which will actually work on these items. Pricing analysis, decisions about outsourcing, short-term decision making. And now, as I said just now, overseeing the IT function and overseeing the HR function also now has become the role of CFO. A lot of companies have HR also coming under the CFO. IT function also under the CFO, not necessarily always, but yes, many organizations in the world have these two functions coming under the purview of CFO. That is reality. That also has become one of the roles of CFOs nowadays. And strategic planning, sometimes overseeing this function, is the role of CFO. And if you know this, in real life, when you actually get into some of the organizations, you'll be surprised that there will be a team of people which is called as a strategy team. That's all. In banks, some of my friends are working in some top-notch banks where they are part of a strategy team. That's all. What do? They keep on devising strategies. Daily, that's what they do. Will there be strategies daily? No. But they have to observe what is happening in the market, what is happening in the world banking scenario. So they should be always on the toes. And they should be giving the management some ideas. And who are all these people? Once again, sir, most of them are chartered accountants. Few MBAs were also there in that team. But, of course, my friends were chartered accountants who are in the strategy team of those banks. And there is a separate team. 5 to 8 people will be sitting there and daily thinking about what strategies to be applied, what kind of new things have to be developed in the company, what changes we can do. This is what they do 365 days. That's very strange, but it happens. Big organizations have that team also. Of course, they're in some other type of organizations, because I was talking about a bank, naturally finance people will be there. In case of other organizations, like manufacturing organizations, so there will be a person from finance in that team, there will be a person from marketing strategy, there will be a person from technical things like product planning and product design strategies, etc. So different types of people, different knowledge areas, people from different knowledge areas will be part of that strategic team. But my point once again is, from the traditional role of being a number cruncher, now the finance person has become a strategist. That is what we have to look at. And regulatory compliance, of course, is there, will be there. Tax compliances, that return, this return, and company law compliances in India, all these compliances ultimately is the responsibility of CFO. How many times you would have seen some company has defaulted something, some company has done something wrong. Who goes to jail? The owner generally goes to UK somewhere, but CFO goes to jail. That's what happens, unfortunately. So CFO's role is there in almost every aspect of the organization, except operations and marketing, we can say. Except operations and marketing, most of the organization nowadays in the modern scenario is under the CFO's purview, including risk management, regulatory compliance, accounting, auditing, taxation, all of them. IT, information technology. IT here is not income tax. Information technology function, HR means human resources function, management accounting, decision making, everything, financing decisions, investment decisions, all these things are covered by, are coming under the CFO's role at a broader level. So the essence of all this is The current day's CFO requires much more broader and deeper knowledge than the earlier CFO, and is required to be more dynamic also and more tech savvy also compared to earlier. The roles are not the same as they were earlier. That is the essence of this entire discussion of what is the role of the modern day finance executive. Very important concept to understand, because you are the ones who are going to be part of organizations in future. Somewhere in that chart where you fit, I don't know, but somewhere you will fit there in many of the organizations. Then you should understand the overall structure. The problem with many of the people is they only know the brick, what they are becoming. They don't know what is the wall in which they are the brick. If you don't know the wall in which you are the brick, you remain a brick. At the maximum, you will go another brick, that's all. But if you know the wall, entire wall, that is business, which is made of many bricks, of course you will start as a brick only. Nobody is going to start as a wall. But you have a chance of becoming a wall one day. That is the main point to understand. That broader perspective is required in understanding and learning these subjects, particularly the financial management in this context, and strategic management also has to be learned in such a way where we understand this entire wall, not just only the brick where we are fitting. You will not start as a wall, that is for sure. By becoming chartered accountant, you are not going to become CFO of any big company. Impossible. It will take few years, sometimes few decades to reach there. But yes, when you reach there, by that time you know all these things. You would have handled these things independently, separately, one by one, and you know them most importantly. Then the role of CFO can be really actually performed very well, and that is the objective ultimately, or in general the goal of any finance person will be that. So usually, what is the final goal, if at all? In a corporate ladder we are talking, personal goals are different. Personal goals, I want to make this much money, I want to have this car, those are different. Those will be anyway there for different people according to their whims and fancies. But what will be the career goal for a person who wants to be in the corporate? If for a person who wants to practice, that goal is again different altogether. We are not talking about that person. For a person who wants to be in the corporates, what will be the ultimate goal in general is becoming a CFO. After becoming CFO, you cannot become anything else mostly. You will become CFO of another company, that's all. But once you reach there, automatically you will be able to understand all the things that happen in the organization at a very broader level, and that's what we are supposed to know from now onwards. Suddenly you cannot say, after becoming CFO I will learn this. That is not the way it works. After becoming CFO you cannot learn this. You learn this first, then become CA, then work towards any of these functions for so many years, then you become CFO. So nobody can say, what is the point of learning all of them now? Anyway, I'm not going to become CFO tomorrow. It will not work like that. So the learning process has to be aimed at the top. Not necessarily that we will become the top tomorrow. We will become eventually after some time. But while reaching there, we should be knowledgeable enough in all those areas where we are supposed to handle the finance function in a big organization. That's a crucial thing to be understood by every finance student, whether it is a CA student or an MBA finance student. They should understand this very clearly. Anyway, now moving on to the simple other small topic of, like, let us say this insolvency thing. Like financial distress and insolvency also can happen to the companies. See, we have to also understand always the organizations will not be successful. There are many organizations which fail also. In fact, most of the organizations in the world fail only. Very few organizations really become successful. Why is that? Because it is a very complicated activity that has to be performed in any organizations. So there are so many things like price of the product, service, demand of the product, price of the inputs like raw materials and labor. They are all to be managed on a continuous basis. So the success of organization is not going to be just depending upon the intention of the management. In management, intention will be fantastic. Management always wants to have profits. Management always wants to create wealth to the shareholders. All the objectives will be good, but the point is, reality will not be as good as the objectives. Reality will be better. So there will be challenges in every juncture. What price we have to fix for our product or service? We keep too much high price, then there may not be demand. If we keep too low price, then that might be making us or pushing us into losses. Difficult decisions. Input prices might change. We may not be able to pass on that to the customers. That is a problem. If you keep on talking about problems, there will be hundreds and thousands of problems for organizations on a daily basis. These are only just few examples. And not only that, debt and equity have to be managed directly. That is part of the financing decision. The capital structure has to be managed. If at all debt is higher, then higher interest will be there. And what if the cash inflow is not sufficient to pay the interest? Then that's a problem. Lot of pressure on the organization. Why? Because if you take debt, you have to pay interest irrespective of whether you got profits or not. If you got profits, well and good, no problem. Happily will pay interest. But even if you got losses, still you have to pay interest because that is a compulsory obligation. Interest payment at least is an immediate obligation. And a lot of organizations become debt ridden. Actually, they will be in the debt trap because of non-sufficient cash flows that they are able to generate. Great danger for any organization is this. Having the responsibility of paying interest, but not having money to even pay that interest is the biggest stress, and that will automatically put stress on the firm. And not only that, the creditors also will start pressurizing. When the solvency position and liquidity position is not good, the creditors and short-term and long-term lenders will pressurize. And all these things, if they are not managed by the firm well, that is when we call a particular firm is called as a is called to be in a distress. So it is a financial distress where the cash inflows of a firm are inadequate to meet all its current obligations. We have cash, but that is not enough to meet the current obligations. Is a simple, you can say, the position where a firm can be considered to be in financial distress. You have things to be paid, but you don't have money. That's all. What else is financial distress? That is a simple thing. But what kind of distress this is? This is a liquidity distress because we are looking at current obligations. Current obligations is a short-term distress. But what happens if this short-term distress continues for a longer period of time? If it is for only for a few months of a year, if it is only for a few days of a month, that is quite common. Any organization, big or small, might experience some cash flow fluctuations. There might be some gaps in the inflows and outflows. That is quite common. Even little bit of financial distress in the shorter run in the form of liquidity crunch is also not very uncommon. That is also at least reasonably okay. But what if this financial distress continues over a long period of time? Then gone. Then the firm is said to be insolvent. Insolvent means the solvency of the business is not there anymore. So what is liquidity and what is solvency? Now we got these two words, very important words, which we will use later also in this subject. We should be very clear about them. So what is liquidity? Liquidity is the ability of the firm to meet its current obligations. If that ability is not there, that is not a good sign. But that does not mean the firm has shut down and it has become insolvent. But yes, it is definitely a very awkward position. The firm will be in a very stressful situation. The owners will be in a big stress. That happens. A lot of organizations face that. They have obligations to be paid, but they don't have money. What they will do? They feel the stress. Nothing else they can do. But that is a short-term phenomena, liquidity stress. But if this continues over a period of time, then in the long term, the same becomes a solvency problem. So if it is a liquidity problem, not okay, but still compared to solvency problem, it is okay. But if it is a solvency problem, gone, that means the firm will shut down, as simple as that, no other option. That's what happens. How many examples we can take? How many types of top companies have shut down? We always take once again the bad things and bad people's examples. Bad in the sense in the eyes of the people, not that they are bad as such. Nobody knows that, and we are not the ones to judge that. For example, Kingfisher Airlines is there. Kingfisher Airlines shut down. Vijay Mallya ran away. Solvency position is compromised. They could not pay their staff salary also. They could not pay the interest to the banks also from whom they have taken the loans. They could not repay the loans to the bank also at that point of time. No obligations they could not meet. That means that company has become insolvent, and because of being head of that company, Vijay Mallya had to leave the country as per his choice. Not a good choice, but as per his choice, he has left the country. Okay, we all take this example. Sir, what about Jet Airways? Jet Airways is a successful company. Jet Airways has always been the top-notch airlines in the country. That was never considered to be a bad company. The owner of Jet Airways was considered to be one of the top excellent entrepreneurs of the country, but still that also got insolvent, almost insolvent. Now, as we are speaking, Jet Airways is selling its aircrafts. The top number one airlines of the India, number one airlines of the country, not Kingfisher. Kingfisher story is over long back. But Jet Airways is the biggest airlines in the country, private airlines for decades. Now they are in a situation where they are selling the aircraft. What happened? They are going to become insolvent. Actually, they already became insolvent. So they are going to shut down. That's all. Nothing else will happen. So any organization can face this. The point is, people's perceptions are different. People's perceptions are good, bad. This guy is a good guy, that guy is a bad guy. Somebody has done this intentionally, or somebody has done some fraud. These are the things that we gossip about. But realities could be completely different, which we don't know, so we cannot comment on them. But what is definite reality is there have been companies which became insolvent due to bad practices and bad management, and there have been companies which became insolvent in spite of being for having followed the good management principles. So for decades together, for years together, these were all successful companies, but suddenly they became insolvent. What happened? Something would have happened. After some years, or maybe after a few months, we'll come out the entire will come to know the entire story of Jet Airways. But as of now, as we are speaking, they are in a deep trouble. That is for sure. So the point of any company can actually get into financial distress and insolvency is a fact that we should understand with a very open mind, not with a bias. Not with a bias. A company became insolvent does not mean definitely the management was completely wrong. Lot of factors, external factors, market factors, some shocks like demonetization, some shocks like COVID, coronavirus can make the companies disappear from the business, because some companies might not be in a position to sustain for that longer term without sufficient liquidity. So liquidity position, if it is in trouble for some period of time, maybe there will be some kind of sustenance possibility. But if that continues for a longer time, that will affect the solvency of the organization also. When it affects the solvency of the organization, opposite of solvent is insolvent. Then we say that organization has become insolvent. So simply, what is insolvency? Insolvency is nothing but inability of a firm to repay various debts as a result of continuous financial distress. That is insolvency. So that is just one short note question which can be also understood in general. Now moving on to another topic of relationship of financial management with other related disciplines like financial management and accounting, how they are related. You can generally go through them. You don't have to really get into each of these points here. But yes, various aspects of other disciplines on financial management, how they will be interlinked with the financial management, you can generally go through that. But yes, at a broader level, accounting is generally the post-mortem, that is about past things that have happened already, but financial management is about future. So that is a basic difference, we can say. So some of the differences can be understood here. How the funds will be treated in the accounting and financial management. For example, in accounting, measurement is based on accrual principle. That's what we follow in the accounting. But whereas in the case of financial management, we don't worry about profit much. It is more based on cash flows. This logic already we discussed. So accounting focuses on the term profit, which is nothing but sales minus expenses. But financial management does not care about profits much. It looks at cash flows. Cash flows means both inflows and outflows. What are the net cash flows? That will be the one where the finance manager is more concerned, because he wants to maintain the solvency of the organization by providing the cash flows necessary to satisfy the obligations. And not only that, you need to have cash for acquiring and financing the assets needed to achieve the goals of the organization. How can you acquire the assets without cash? Not possible. So at a broader level, accounting focuses on profits and financial management focuses on cash flows. And supplying of organization with sufficient cash flows in order to meet its obligations on one part and also to finance the assets which are needed to achieve the goals of organization. That is one big distinction we can say between financial management and financial accounting. But by the way, they are closely related also. You have to understand that. We cannot say these are two completely different things. Accounting is definitely a necessary input for the financial management function. For example, if you want to do the financial statement analysis, ratio analysis, you want to calculate so many ratios, which we have a chapter separately in this subject. How can you do that without the financial statements? Not possible. So, where the financial accounting stops, financial analysis starts. So, these financial statements, including balance sheet, income statements, etc., cash flow statements, they will help the financial managers in gauging the past performance. And once you look at the past performance, from that you can take cues and then decide about the future directions of the organization. Ultimately, one point logically has to be kept in mind. You cannot have a plan for the future until and unless you know about the past, realities of the past, not assumptions, not the things that you thought that should have been done. What has actually happened, everybody should be clear. Once on the basis of that, we can plan about the future. So future is not something that comes automatically. It is a continuation of the past and present only. So the past, if it is understood correctly in the present, then the planning for future can be made properly. That logic applies to financial management also. Though financial accounting looks at past, financial management looks at future. Without looking at past, the future also is not possible to be forecasted. So in the decision making things also, financial management uses the financial accounting information. Definitely they are closely related, though they are having differences in the treatment of funds and decision making. One of them is treatment of funds, as we discussed it just now, because financial accounting looks at profits more, financial management looks at cash flows more. In case of decision making, usually accounting is not something that is related to decision making. Basically, the purpose of accounting is just to collect and present the financial data of the past, mostly past. Present is rare, but future operations of the organization is about forecasted financial statements can be prepared by accounting people. Then this data what has been prepared by the financial accounting people is used by the financial manager for financial decision making. So the point is, the financial manager cannot collect the data automatically, or accountant cannot make the decisions. It's not that. It is vice versa also possible. But usually the focus of accountant is to collect the data and present the data, and financial manager's responsibility relates to financial planning, controlling, and decision making. So one way we can say financial management begins where the accounting ends. This is what I have been talking about. Of course, it's a very generic statement, not necessarily that always it will be true, but essentially yes. Financial management is a futuristic thing. Decision making is about future. Can you make any decision about the past? You tell me. Anybody can have this exercise. You take any decision about the past. Does it make sense? Nobody in the world can take decision about the past. The moment we use the word decision making itself means we are talking about future. That means we are talking about financial management here, not financial accounting. So one way, don't write this, but for understanding purposes, financial accounting is a post-mortem which looks into the past, whereas financial management is a futuristic, looks into the future. That is one of the questions also we can expect in the exams. The similarities and the differences between financial accounting and financial management. Very important question. Is financial management related to other disciplines also? Of course, yes, it is related to other disciplines like marketing, production, other techniques like quantitative methods, not just about accounting. Accounting is only one part. So various aspects also will be required to be understood in order to understand financial management. So what are the areas of financial management if you look at them? The areas of the financial management are broadly this, which we already have discussed earlier. Investment analysis, working capital management, sources of the funds and cost of the funds, what we call as cost of capital, capital structure determination. Each of them is our chapters only, nothing else. And analysis of risk and returns. These are the areas of financial management and financial decisions. So what will be the areas from which the support will come? Of course, the primary discipline is accounting. Without accounting, we cannot do the analysis of the past. Without that, we cannot understand how about future. So definitely, primary discipline is accounting, no doubt. But is it the only thing? No. There are other disciplines also, like marketing, production, and quantitative methods. When you look at investment analysis about future, you want to buy a machine which manufactures, let us say, 20,000 tons of a product each year. Without consulting a marketing person, if you want to buy that machine, and because you have the power of investment analysis and decision making, you bought that. Actual market is only 5,000 tons. What was the use of that machine? That was a useless decision. So without having support from marketing people in understanding what is the sales potential, without having support from operations again means production. I better use the word operations. I prefer to use it operations than production, but still, as I told already, major functions in any organization will be marketing and operations. From there also the financial management function has to get support, because marketing people will say we can sell 20,000 tons. If the production capacity is not there, then what we will do with that? Okay, we want to buy the machine. If the operations people tell that labor is not available actually in the market, it will take 6 months to get the labor actually to be bringing them to work. So these practical things have to be always consulted with the relevant people. Financial manager is not somebody who sits in his chamber and takes decisions according to the theories that he learned in the FM paper or SFM paper in chartered accountancy. Yes, these are knowledge areas which are helpful, but in reality, these areas have to be used in conjunction with, in coordination with, by having a proper support to and from the other departments, including accounting, marketing, production. Of course, they have to use certain techniques of quantitative methods like probability and other things, which we will discuss as part of risk management earlier. Of course, ultimately of all this, ultimately what is the goal? Shareholder wealth maximization is the goal. If these are all done properly with coordination, maximization of wealth might happen. Again, there is no guarantee, but it might happen. There is a possibility. But if this support itself is not there, if these people are all quarreling among themselves, then that organization will definitely fail. So the organization as a whole is a big team working together. Every person requires support from other person. Everybody has to do their own job according to their knowledge areas and expertise and experience. And at the same time, they have to get support from others and they have to give support to others. If that coordination exists in the organizations, then such organizations will be successful. And if there is no such support, practically a lot of organizations also there where there is no such support, a lot of ego issues will be there. People will be not cooperating with one another. Such organizations will not grow well. That result will show automatically. We don't have to separately curse such organizations. The result of such organization will be automatically bad. And then the top management will definitely come to know what happened between these people, and they will fire the people if at all these various disciplines and various departmental managers have really worked against the interest of the organization. So better thing is what? All of these people working together, because ultimately the goal of organization is same, that is the shareholders wealth maximization. If everybody works towards the same direction, definitely that goal is possible to be achieved. Otherwise it is difficult. Now coming to the last area almost of this particular first chapter, the agency problem and agency cost. What is this agency problem? So here the point is, it's in a just nutshell we can understand the conceptuality of this. In any other type of business, whether it is a sole proprietorship or partnership, directly the owner participates in the business in general. Like if at all there is a sole proprietorship, who is going to be sitting in the cash counter and who is going to be actually doing the business? If we take a small shop or a small hotel or a restaurant or a mess somewhere, the owner is there. He himself will be there. He will do everything almost. A lot of times owner himself will be the sweeper also. He himself will be the cashier also. He will be the finance manager. He is the marketing manager. Everything is he only. So what happens is, mostly the activities which are required for an organization will be done by the owner. Same thing happens in case of a partnership firm also. If not one person, few people will be handling the operations of the organization if it is a partnership. But in the case of corporates, it is not like that. In the case of corporates, there is a agency problem, or we can say that it's not a problem, it is something which is reality. There is owner or shareholder who is completely a different person, and there is an agent or manager who is completely different person. So let us call this as CEO, or you call it as board of directors, as the case may be, whatever it is, doesn't matter. But these owners and the board of directors need not be same, that we discussed already in the earlier session. In India, taking Indian examples, we may think that where is the difference? Mukesh Ambani is the owner also, and Mukesh Ambani is the CEO also. But that is not the example of a corporate. A true corporate examples you have to take from traditionally settled in corporates, old ones. Those corporates, if you observe, like Nestle, like Hewlett Packard, these are the corporates which have been there, like even including Coca-Cola or Pepsi company. Majority of the stakeholding is not with one person or few persons. It is very diverse. So what happens? There will be too many owners, not just one owner or two owners, too many of them, lakhs of them, crores of them, but only few people who are managing the company, and naturally these owners will appoint the managers. So conflict of interest could be there in between them. If the agent, the board of directors or CEO or management in general does not work for the interest of the shareholders, that becomes a big problem. So this is a matter of trust. Agency is always about the trust. So these corporations, if at all they are really running like corporations, they will run on the trust that the owners put on their agents, who are nothing but managers or board of directors or management in general. If the management or the managers decide that they will not work towards the interests of the shareholders, then the conflict of interest will be there and the organization will not survive. It will not grow, it will not survive, it will be extinct. That's what happens. So simply speaking, very important feature of corporate, which you might already have learned in company law, separation of ownership and management is the very crucial aspect of corporate or company type of structure. So naturally, as far as the theoretical concern or the way this structure is actually conceived is concerned, in theory managers should act in the best interest of the shareholders, but in reality the managers may try to maximize their individual goals like salaries, and their perquisites they will increase. So there is a principal agent relationship between managers and owners, which is called as agency problem, and this happens throughout the world. Many organizations it happens. Just for general understanding purposes, everybody knows Steve Jobs, though he has already died. But Steve Jobs means immediately what comes into our brain is Apple. He was the founder of Apple, actually one of the founders of Apple long back, not the second phase of Apple he had. There is a second innings of Apple which we are knowing about. There was a first innings for Steve Jobs with Apple company earlier, around 30, 35, 40 years back, when the company was originally started, or maybe more than that. He was a young guy and definitely an innovative person who started along with his friends this company Apple, and he was a CEO also for that company for some time, but he was kicked out from the Apple, from the company which he started. That is how the corporates work, because the owners or shareholders, or the board of directors elected by the owners or shareholders, have the ultimate say. So the same person who started the company, one of the founders, not the only one, but one of the founders, was being kicked out of the company as a CEO, and after few decades again he was requested, almost begged by the same management team or board of directors to come back into the organization. It's a different story. For fun purposes, he had one condition: whoever has kicked him out earlier, they all have to be first of all fired, was his condition. And after those are all fired, then he came back to the Apple organization and became CEO. And we know the real success story of Apple after his second innings started with Apple. Prior to that, a lot of people don't know about Apple, at least in other parts of the world except in USA. So the point here is, there is no exception, no big person, no small person. Anybody can be just hired and fired. And if the management or the board of directors or the shareholders feel that this person is not doing well, is not catering to the interests of the shareholders, rather he is doing or actually protecting his own self-interest, anytime this agency problem can come in. And once it comes, usually what happens is the CEO will be fired. That's what generally happens. So why it happens is what we are looking at. We don't have to worry about what happens in reality. If this question is asked, what we should write. So in a nutshell, what is the agency problem? Agency problem is all about that the chances that managers may place personal goals ahead of the goals of the owners. Owners means shareholders. And then naturally the agency problem leads to agency cost. What is the agency cost? That is the additional cost borne by the shareholder to monitor the manager and control their behavior so as to maximize the shareholder wealth. Already shareholders appointed a manager, let us call him CEO. And there should be somebody who is monitoring him also. Usually that is internal audit. In other countries, internal audit is a very powerful function. Unfortunately, in India, it is just a formality. Again, it will take time. Democracy or corporate democracy or value added things like costing or management accounting or internal audit, these things have been more popular and more valued in other countries. More than that, in India, usually the regulatory things are more valued, but that is only for now. But for sure, simple logic, India will follow the world, whatever we call it. We may call any names to that, but ultimately we have to follow the world. World will not follow us as far as these things are concerned. Maybe in other things world may follow us. World may follow us in yoga, world may follow us in other things, no problem, that is good. But when it comes to the things related to corporates, management, financial management, strategies, mergers and acquisitions, big things, we are not the ones who will guide the world. America and other developed countries having bigger corporations than us will guide the world, and we have to just follow. So what is the experience of those companies in the world? Internal audit is the most powerful function there. Don't expect in India. In India, internal audit is there as a formality. Same way, management accounting is more powerful in US than financial accounting. In India, it is other way. Financial accounting is more powerful than management accounting. Like that, different value systems will be existing in different countries, but still the point is regulatory based things in chartered accountancy also will not stay forever in future. That point always I make. Again, because the topic has come, I am repeating that. Nowadays, we may think that we know income tax, we know GST, so we may make some money if we do some practice. Because there is a rule in the Companies Act that a chartered accountant has to sign the audit report. I will sign some audit reports and I will make money. In future, money cannot be made by signing something. That is the experience of the world. Money can only be made by value adding to the client. How do you add value to the client? By being a consultant, or by being an internal auditor, or by being a management accountant or a management consultant. These are the areas which will grow much faster and definitely much in bigger size also in India, because that is where we still lag behind in the context of the world business. But still, in the other countries, these things are already taken care of. Agency problem definitely is there, everywhere it is there. But in other countries, the controls on these agency problem, there is a solution also already there to appoint somebody else who will monitor this manager also. So agency costs are usually of 4 types. You can write these things exactly if the question is about agency problem and agency costs. What is agency problem and what is agency cost? Exactly this paragraph you can write. And why this arises? Because of separation of ownership from management in the corporate structure of business. Then agency problem might arise. In order to avoid that problem, the company might incur agency cost. How? It might incur in 4 different types: monitoring, bonding, opportunity cost, and structuring cost. So various types of costs can be incurred by the companies in order to control this agency problem. To monitor them, there may be somebody appointed, somebody like an internal auditor, or audit committees, for example, can be made, who will monitor the top bosses also. Bonding is something which is related to keeping the person associated with the organization, so that there is a brand associated. Now let us say Satya Nadella, Microsoft. We talk about that. Is there any guarantee that Satya Nadella will be with Microsoft till he dies? Maybe tomorrow if he gets a better offer from Pepsi company, he will move there. Maybe, we don't know. Or maybe if his expertise is only in this sector. Let us say Sundar Pichai wants to come back to India and start some contract farming somewhere in his village. Let us say, imagine that like some Tamil movie. Then that position in Google is vacant and maybe Satya Nadella can move to Google. So the point of one person to one company, there is no rule like that. These are the ones who are with that company forever, because these are not owners. These are only managers. CEO is not the owner. He is only a manager. But he is getting huge salaries. How much they get, you can Google it. Millions of dollars of salaries they will get. That is all agency cost. Why that much salary has to be paid to them? To create that bonding. That much of bonding is created. Of course, not only salaries, they will get a lot of stock options, etc., with which they at least in their dreams also associate themselves with that company again, at least till they resign. After that, again, it will be a different story. But that bonding is definitely to be created. That costs. If you pay less to your manager, naturally that bonding will not be there. You will just look at other opportunity and jump to another company at the earliest possible convenience. So bonding requires cost. Monitoring requires cost because it requires new professionals and other external people also having a control and monitoring on the management team. Then opportunity cost also will be there because if they have to be kept, then we may lose the next best opportunity. That opportunity cost also is there. Maybe we have a person who is similarly capable, who is available at a lesser salary, but still we may have to pay higher salary to the existing person. So that means we are losing the next best opportunity. That opportunity cost also could be there. These are all just examples. Like that, structuring costs. Organization structuring is the biggest complicated aspect. If the structuring is done properly, then only the agency problem can be monitored and it can be controlled. If you give all power to the CEO, if CEO is the supreme power and he can do anything in the organization without any control, without any other internal checks, that is dangerous. So structuring also has to be done in such a way that there are internal checks. Even for CEO, there should be internal checks. I mean, just for example, once again, I'm telling you, some of the organizations where we used to do stock audit earlier, where precious metals like copper, wires and all are kept in a godown. Of course, copper wires are there, means the copper metal within those wires is very, very precious. So tons and tons of copper used to be there in the godowns. And the storekeeper will not even let the CEO to enter the godown without his permission. CEO cannot get into that godown also. Storekeeper is the supreme there. And along with some other person. So there will be always internal checks. So that kind of structuring has to be done. All these things will cost. That is the agency problem and agency cost. And how to tackle this agency problem? Of course, there will be so many things. In realities, it is easier said than done. We can say so many things and give a lot of gyan about it. But ultimately, these are the points to be noted to make some efforts to address these issues of agency problems and trying to reduce agency cost. Agency problem, if you want to solve them, definitely there will be agency costs. So that has to be borne by the organization if at all they want to reduce the agency problem. So what is that? One is managerial compensation, that is linked to profit. As I told already, usually there will be bonuses which are variable pays more than the fixed pays. Let me tell this also because the topic has come. As you move upper and upper in the ladder of the corporate, or in the corporate ladder, as you move to the upper and upper segments, your fixed salary will be lesser and variable salary will be higher. Of course, fixed salary will be lesser does not mean it will not be lesser than the previous position, but as a component of the total salary, fixed salary will be lesser and variable salary will be higher because your bonuses, your all perquisites and other compensations will be linked to the performance of not just you but the organization also. So they will be linked to the profits, linked to the departmental goals and objectives. So naturally what happens, there is a kind of affection or almost a compulsion for the person to perform. He can, if his interest and organization interest are not different, if he gets if he is able to perform well and get more profit to the organization, he himself is getting benefited. So what is the major problem or issue with this agency is that there is a possibility that personal interest and organizational interest could be different, and we are mitigating that here by linking the personal interest with organizational interest. That is one way of tackling the agency problem, fixing the managerial compensation, linking to profit. Then employee is also designed to address the issue with the underlying assumption that maximization of the stock price is the objective of the investors. For this, usually something like ESOP, employee stock option plans, is what companies will adopt. Usually that is the general technique. So the first one is we can call it as profit linked bonus. Second one is ESOP, employee stock option plans, or sweat equity shares, what can be also called as. So what happens? These employees will get some shares of the company in which they are working. So when the share price increases in the market, their wealth also is increasing. So wealth of the shareholders is also increasing. So when they increase the wealth of shareholders and their wealth also is increasing simultaneously, means there is no conflict of interest. They both are going in same direction. So they will strive to increase the market price. They will strive to do that because their wealth also is related to that. And in the event, in the same process, eventually shareholders' wealth also will be increased. That is another way. And effective monitoring, of course, can be done, as I said, with some separate departments like internal audit or audit committees, etc. Monitoring can be done on the managers. Managers or top management also to be monitored by somebody else. That is also part of it. So audit is one such thing. Majorly, the audit function has to be at least working like a monitoring tool, and that should be answerable to whom? Not to the manager. It should be answerable to the owner. So the owners and shareholders interest, who is representing the owners, is auditor. Whether it is internal auditor or external auditor, ultimately, of course, internal auditor will report to the manager. But as I said, in a lot of organizations, internal audit function is made so separate from the management itself that they directly report to the board, not to the CEO. Directly, internal audit reports to the board with independent reports. That is a different story. But at least the auditor, external auditor, has to serve the interests of the shareholders, whether the people in the management are working properly towards fulfilling the interests of the owners or not. If the things are going fine, auditor will give a clean report. If there are any fraudulent things that are happening, if there are things that are going in a wrong direction, definitely the auditor has to raise a red flag, and then that report will be a kind of a monitoring on the management, addressing to the shareholders. So the point lot of times chartered accountants or CPAs ignore is they are responsible for shareholders, they are not responsible for management. In order to resolve this conflict of interest only, they are there. They are not there to serve the interests of the manager. But problem is, in reality, the manager or the agent or the CEO or the top management appoints them. So they will try to serve the interests of the management because they are in continuous contact with them. How many times the shareholders will talk to auditor? Only once in the year in general when there is an AGM. But the management talks to the auditor on a continuous basis. So the relationship with the management will be more. But the point again to be noted is that should not be taken as granted, and the auditor should not be carried away with that relationship. He has to always keep in mind what is his job. His job is towards the shareholder, not towards the manager. That independence has to be maintained. If that is not there, the audit, whatever people do, is a farce. Simple. And unfortunately, that's what happens in a lot of cases, particularly in India. Of course, early outside also it happens, but it will not be generally considered to be a good thing, at least outside. But here we take it as granted. Here it's okay for us. Chalta hai, so everything chalta hai. So audit bhi chalta hai. Auditor generally represents management here than the shareholders. Unfortunately, which is not correct, not ethical. That is not what auditor is supposed to be. You will study the auditing subject also, and in that subject you will understand theoretically how many great things we tell to ourselves, which we have to write in exam definitely to get marks. But my point is, how many people really implement them in real life? That is a questionable thing. At least we can try to implement if we are having that ethical standards with us. So that is about the agency problem and agency cost. That's it. With that, we can conclude the chapter 1, first chapter of this subject, financial management. And after the completion of this chapter, you may answer these MCQs for general understanding of whether you followed this chapter well or not. But if you have chosen not to do that also, I don't mind. I prefer and suggest you to do that, answer these MCQs. Not that MCQs will be there in FM. Don't think that there will be MCQs in FM. Not from exam point of view, from understanding point of view. You better try to answer them and check your answers, these MCQs. But whether you do it or not, definitely what you have to do is this. You have to write answers for these questions on your own in your notebooks. What is the difference between financial management and financial accounting? And financial management is concerned about acquisition and financing of short-term and long-term credit. It's about finance function of the financial management. Third point, third question, discuss the two main aspects of finance function. So first one, definitely yes, you have to write that. You can write that. We discussed them. Second one, we discussed that. Third one, we discussed that. Two main aspects means what? Basically procurement of funds and effective utilization of funds. This fourth one you can ignore now. You will be able to answer it later only. So just Ignore the fourth question now. That will be dealt with in the chapter of financing decisions later. So 1, 2, 3. Then fifth question, of course, yes. What is wealth maximization and profit maximization? Very important question. Explain that. And then discuss the role of a CFO as we discussed in today's session. Write a short note on that. Seventh one is something like a social studies question, general essay type, not like big one, some few lines you can write. In the recent years, there have been a number of environmental pollution and other regulations imposed on businesses. In view of these changes, is maximization of shareholder wealth still a realistic objective? Explain. Of course, we can say that in spite of these restrictions, still maximization of shareholders' wealth is a realistic objective, because a sustainable business is that one which considers not only the shareholders' wealth but also the stakeholders' wealth, including the environmental and societal developmental aspects. Like that, some general thing you can write about. So write your own answers to these questions, and there are hints given also here where you can get a reference to that particular paragraph and develop your answers. So this task you have to do immediately after the completion of this first chapter, which we did already. So now it is your turn to write these answers and keep ready in your notes. I will check them later. Fine then. We will discuss another topic in the next session. Till then, take care. Bye bye. Thank you very much.